In this video we're going to discuss inventory locations in Business Central. Before we actually discuss the locations, we're going to just have a look at what a location is and how that's structured in its relationship to zones and bins within Business Central. Now this is a diagram of a location, in this case location A, and you'll see that we've got a few things going on here. We've got zones, and zones can be related to, zones could be anything, but in a typical example, a zone may be a receiving zone, you would then have a storage area, and you may have a shipping zone. So those would be three different zones within a particular location. And then within each of those zones you can have multiple bins. So I may have two bins within my receiving zone, and those bins could relate to typically receiving doors or particular receiving areas. The same goes for storage and shipping. So the relationship between the location is that within a location you get multiple zones, and each of those zones may have multiple bins. So back in Business Central we're going to have a look at what those locations mean in terms of the actual items. So if I just select, I'm just going to select this particular item, I can see that I've got 15 currently on hand, but I don't actually know what locations I was in. And if I just go and check my availability by location, I can see for that particular item everything's sitting in unspecified at the moment. I can see I've got a few other locations there, but none of that stock is sitting in any of those locations. So unspecified means that at the point of creating the original transaction I didn't actually specify a location, and that's just the default location that Business Central uses. So it may be that that's incorrect. I want to adjust that. So let's just have a look at a couple of ways of actually adjusting that stock. Now, the first prize would be that it's actually created correctly in the first place, and when I receive that stock or sell that stock, it needs to be going through the correct locations. But in this particular case, I can simply just adjust the inventory. So we'll assume that 15 that's unspecified, actually only 10 of that is unspecified, and 5 of that I know is definitely in my main location, the main warehouse. And if I simply select OK there, it'll do the adjustment for me. If I go into the on-hand stock, I can see that movement. So there's a negative adjustment of 5 and then a positive adjustment into the main location code for that same 5. So that's one way of adjusting those entries. It's really quick and easy, and there's a journal that's just created in the background. The other way is to actually do a transfer order. So this is where I would want to transfer stock from one location to the other, and in this particular case you can also specify an in-transit location. So if we're using an in-transit location, let's just have a look at what that looks like. So if I just have a look at my locations, I'll see that I've got 5 different locations. Now if you remember when we looked at the stock on hand, I could actually only see 3 locations. And there's a reason for that. If I just select one of these locations, for example the main one that I've just used, there's this little option on the right over here that says use as in transit. In this case it's unchecked. However, if I go to one of these logistic locations, you can see it is actually used as an in-transit location. And what that means is I can't actually use these in-transit locations as physical locations. I can't transfer in or out of them. I can merely use them as in-transit locations between 2 physical locations. Let's have a look at what that means in terms of actually entering a transfer order. So let's just do a transfer order. And when I create a transfer order, I'm just going to create a new one. It now wants to know which physical locations I want to transfer between. So let's just say I'm going to move those 5 that are just transferred out of the main warehouse or location and into the west warehouse or location. And now I've got an option here. I can either do a direct transfer, in which case there is no in-transit location used at all. It's simply a transfer directly from one location to the other. However, if I was using a transportation company, for example, an outsourced logistics company in this case, I would select that option, and that would then use that in transit location, so that the stock or the inventory would be moved from the main location into the outlog in transit location, and then into the west location ultimately once it's received on that side. So I am now going to select the item, so I think it was that one that we used earlier, and I'm going to transfer the 5. So that's going to move 5 out of main through the logistics location in transit code, and then back into the west location. So I'm just going to post that. I'm going to ship. So that will have shipped it out of main and into the in-transit location. And then once I receive it on the other side, I'm going to post this transfer order again and simply receive it. And that's the end of that transfer order.